Welcome back to our final live Q&A session of the semester. We've all apparently made it to the end of the semester, and I do not know where any of you are. I am still obviously in Buffalo, since that's where I live, looking out my window, and it is snowing. To be fair, the snow is not sticking at all. It's these nice big fluffy flakes, which means that the weather's relatively warm. At the same time, it's the end of spring term and snowing, which I think is about as accurate a reflection of this semester as you can get. So I don't actually have a lot to go over today. I don't really have anything to go over today. The idea of today is to answer any questions you all might have about the final exam itself, about content on the final exam or content that might be on the final exam, questions you might have still from the class, anything you might need. I've got, everything that we've done so far this semester available to me. So hopefully that should make life easy to answer questions. So if you have a question, please type it in the chat and I will get to them as quickly as I can. While I'm waiting for a question, a few just details about the actual final exam itself. I've more or less finished the draft of the final exam. There will be 20 questions on it. You are allowed to bring and I'll even encourage you to have a sheet of paper as you're taking it. You cannot use any websites, external websites. You don't need to use Replit or anything like that. Honestly, anything you need is a sheet of paper. Can I go over the JavaScript sorting questions from the sample questions? That is an awesome question. I don't know that I have a way of going, That was one thing I hadn't thought about, was how do I bring up questions? Let me see if I pull up a new window. Let me see if I can bring up those sample questions without exposing great information or anything like that. So I think I should be able to do this. Let me just double check, go to let's see. Okay, I think this will work. In case you're curious what it looks like from a faculty perspective as we write up the test, this is the sample questions. I'm really hoping, otherwise this is a problem. So blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I don't have an easy way to display this is the only thing. Nah, it's not going to give me an easy way to display it, unfortunately. And because I've set it up to be asked in sort of random order, that's how I get it too. So I'm just going to show this and hopefully you all can sort of play along. So the first one that I pulled up is the JavaScript custom sorting question. Now, the trick is that, we have this function named goalComp, and it is a JavaScript comparator. So the key thing to remember here is in JavaScript, when we have these comparator functions, there are a few things to remember. The first one is they're going to take two of whatever we're working with. So two items from whatever array we're going to try to be sorting. In this case, these are dictionaries. So we need to make sure that whatever function call we make, it has two dictionaries as its arguments. So if you look, and the way that this works, the actual answers that you see will be random. The ordering is totally random as far as answers are, but two of them, begin with the brackets. They have those two dictionaries inside of brackets. Well, that means that you're dealing with not two dictionaries, but with an array that contains two dictionaries. That's a different thing. That's not even a legal function call because we don't have two arguments to it. Similarly, if you look, there's here it's option E and option G, which only takes in a single dictionary. Again, you can eliminate that immediately because we need two dictionaries or two objects. I'm sorry, we're in JavaScript. They're not dictionaries, they're objects in JavaScript. So we need to have those two objects so we can get rid of them. So at this point now we have, none of the above, none of the function calls provided, and these three different function calls for each one of the results. Now, for these questions, I'm telling you what should be returned. So that gets into how we implement JavaScript comparators. And the trick to remember about JavaScript comparators is that the actual value that it returns is meaningless. All that matters is the sign of the value that we return. So what we have here is, right, where we have this returns -1 and returns -3, both of those are returning the same sign, a negative number. So whatever is the answer to A will also be the answer to E. Similarly, here I have a returns 2.7, here I have return 1. Whatever function call matches B will also match C. And similarly for D, it's 0. That's the one case. So now the question is, when do we need to return a negative? When do we need to return 0? When do we need to return a positive? And that's going to depend on how we're using this function. And what this says is goal count allows sorting an array from the object with the lowest goals to the object with the highest goals. So since we want to start by going in order of goals, what we need to do is we need to see if there are different numbers of goals, we have to return the proper value. So in two of these cases that could be valid, they have the same number of goals, but in B they do not, right? This first object has scored 80 goals, the second object scored 65. Since 80 is greater than 65, since we want this value to appear in the array after the second value, we need to return a positive number. So the answer for B and C would be this function call right here. This is the only function call that is made correctly, that contains two objects, where the first parameter should appear after the second parameter. So when two objects have the same number of goals, the object with the lower number of assists should come first. So for here A, we have the same number of goals. It says that we don't care about games, but this one has fewer assists. Therefore, this first parameter, first argument, should appear before the second argument. Since that first one should appear before it, we need to return a negative number. So for both A and E, the answer would be this call, the call that in this case at least is labeled A right here. Right? Remember, a negative number means that the first argument appears earlier. A positive number, any positive number, means the first argument appears later. And of course, here for this call C, they have the same number of goals. They have the same number of assists. The question says objects with equal goals and assists are equivalent. So therefore, for C, we return 0. 0 means the two values are equivalent. I realize that they have a different number of games, but according to the question, that's not how we're sorting them. So in this case, for this situation, right, since here we have the first argument being smaller, that would match any negative return value. In this call, based on the definition we have, the first argument is greater. It has to appear afterward. We need to return a positive argument. And for this call right here, we have the two objects being equivalent. They could appear in either order, so we return 0. So hopefully that answers your question. For those of you who are continuing on to 116, I can tell you for a fact you will be seeing this idea of a comparator again. You will be dealing with it in 116. You will not be dealing with it in either JavaScript or Python. You'll be using a different language. But in fact, this is a very, very, very common way of handling comparisons. This idea of a negative result, 0, or a positive result as a way of ordering two things. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, please type into the chat what further questions you have, or if somebody else has a question, you should feel free to ask. Like I said, I've got obviously the sample questions open. I also have other, Replit. I have all the REPLs from this semester, all the lecture slides, every lecture slide. I don't see any other questions. If you have one, please don't be shy. I promise you. Honestly, we have no idea. It might have your name, it might not. There's no way of knowing. I promise you, if you have a question, there's several other people watching this video right now who also have that question. As far as the final exam goes, it will be asking the questions one at a time. You will not be able to go back. I've talked about this in Piazza a fair bit. It did take me a while to decide how to do it. 2 hours for the 20 questions I have should be plenty of time. I've taken it. All the TAs have taken it. I've worked on it a fair bit in terms of the timing, just to make sure that that's not an issue. Think through each question, go over it. There will be, 320 total points. I know I have provided, if you look in this screen, you can see the number of points for this problem. I assume you guys can see it when you take the test. I believe I could see it there. But that gives you an idea of how much there's going to be. All the questions will be labeled with which module it's from. Not that that matters, other than there will be 80 points per module. So if you're trying to keep track of what's coming up, that would be one way of helping you keep track of that. I've never, I think I've said this before. Not only have I never written an online exam before, I've never actually written a multiple choice test before. Every test I've ever written in my life has always been paper and pencil, writing things out, doing things. So I'm really been going over it a lot, doing everything I can to make sure that it's a good, fair, reasonable assessment of your knowledge of the 115 material. So other questions people have? I'm going to, still don't see any other questions. I'm going to continue to stall for a few seconds just to give people time to type things in. If you come up with questions after this video ends, I will have office hours today at 4 o'clock. Those office hours are on WebEx as usual. I will have another live Q&A at 5 o'clock tonight. And then you can try posting questions to Piazza, but just sort of a word of warning. Over this weekend, I'm going to be spending a lot of time probably running through the final exam many times, trying to make sure that that gets perfect. There are a few other things I need to get done in order to be ready for Monday, other classes and that sort of thing. So I don't know how much I'll be online this weekend, how much I'll be in Piazza to answer questions. I'll try to make it if I can, but just the way the world works, unfortunately, I need to. I also need to mow my lawn, but apparently that's not going to happen. So, if there are not any other questions, I'm going to, I guess, end this stream. I can't imagine it's that enjoyable hearing me ramble as I stall for time. Though you can tell I was both on the speech team, so I can continue to ramble for years. I was on the speech team when I was in college. I was also not only was a disc jockey at my radio station, the college radio station, I actually was one of the program directors, so I can continue to talk and make sure that there's not dead air with the best of them. But at any rate, oh yeah, that's what I'm supposed to say. Make sure you subscribe and like this video and hit the icon to get notifications. Please don't do that. This is the next to last video. I'm praying. So I know that some of you probably are curious about what's going to be happening in the fall. I know as much as you. I'm praying that this is going to be the last video. Snowplow. Snowplow.org is the URL that, or the server that a bunch of my college friends and I own. I'm hoping that there is no snowplow going. I'm hoping I do not have to clear any snow that way. I don't own a snowplow. I do own a snowblower. But my guess is that it's not sticking right now. It doesn't show any signs of sticking. God help me. It's May. I don't want it to snow. I'm done with this snow. So, thank you all. So, I say, unless I get any other questions right now, I just want to thank you all. This was honestly, this was just a rough semester for me for a number of different reasons. Many of which, were before the semester even began or unrelated to this. Any tips for the exam? Wink, wink. Sure. Make sure you study for it. If you have questions, this would be a good time to ask. I realize the exam is at 7:15 at night. Downing a case of beer before the exam would not be a good idea. Actually, frankly, downing any sort of substances like that would not be a good idea. I would try to show up sober. That's always a good way for any exam. Take your time. Do we still have office hours on Monday? I hadn't thought about that. My guess is that for the TAs, no. Just because, remember, all the TAs have their own classes and exams and everything else. So they're probably going to be busy with that. I'll be around on Monday, so I'll hold my office hours my office hours on Monday are at 1 o'clock. So I can be online at 1 if anybody has any questions. That's fine. I say, just going back to tips for the exam, just double check your work would be the big thing. Bring a page of notes. Please don't you're going to your computer. Please don't show up at your computer and have a stack of paper there. If you have more than a page of notes, you're not going to do well. The amount of time you're going to spend just shuffling through pages and everything is going to be detrimental. On the other hand, if there's a topic that you're really struggling with, for instance, how JavaScript sorting works, to use the example of the question I got from earlier, put that down in your notes so you can just refer to it. There's not a lot that you have to memorize. There are some function calls that we've talked about. That would be, again, a good thing to know. And put it in your notes. Don't try to memorize everything. Certainly you don't need to memorize any code. If you think about the various questions, through these sample questions, the only functions I can think of that you really, really, really would need to know, I still haven't finished writing it, so I can't guarantee you anything. Certainly make sure how how to call sort. Make sure you know how to use the various web server functions and Ajax function or JSON functions. There are 4 of them, 5 of them, 6, something like that. The how you set up a web server, how you do the document.get element by ID. Have that in your notes. Know how that works. Of the other mistakes that I can think of that lots of students have struggled with, the difference between inner HTML and value seem to throw a lot of people. Keep that in mind. As you can see, so you may not be able to see this right now and probably may not be able to read this. So just so you realize part of what I'm doing, so this is what's called a pattern matching thing. Part of what I'm going to be doing and part of why I may not be available over the weekend is I am making sure that I can match as wide a range of options as possible. So all these places where you see these weird, brackets that seem to be there and then a star, that's a way of saying accept as many spaces as possible. So you don't have to really worry about spacing. If something, the only place where you'd have to worry about spacing would be in Python, where something can't have a space in front of it. In that situation, you can worry about it. Otherwise, I don't care. Here, you can see I'm accepting either var or let, but just like with everything else, you do need to declare variables when it's appropriate. You need to have a space between either the var or the let, the name of the variable. Spacing everywhere is as optional and as big or small as possible. I really am trying to make sure that I can accept every possible legal answer allowed. The answers do have to match what the question says, but otherwise. So, other sorts of questions, other concerns, issues. If not, and I mean, I said this in the Piazza announcement today. I know I said this in the video also. I just want to thank you all. This semester's not been pleasant for anybody. For almost all of us, this is our first global pandemic. Sure, question about UB Infinite. I mean, technically the answer to, I have a question about UB Infinite, the answer is true. Yes, you do have a question about that. I'm assuming there's an actual question. Feel free. While I wait for that question to come in, thank you all for really doing everything. You've been honest. You've been really good about staying up with the material. You've really been good about giving me feedback, trying to make sure that this class goes well. No worries about it. Take your time. I understand how this works. Like I said, I was a college DJ. I can fill dead air with the best of them, particularly at 2 a.m. when the DJ who is supposed to show up for that shift doesn't. And so I get the phone call that I need to go and fill in. So you all have done wonderfully. I'm really, really happy about that and thankful for everything that you've done. It's been really good. And I hopefully you've enjoyed the class. Hopefully you've gotten a lot out of it. If there's anything to go on, if I want to redo a section on UB Infinite, is it possible to start from the beginning? If you want to redo a section, is it possible to start from the beginning? I think, I don't know is the answer. I'm trying to remember what happens after you finish all of the questions. I thought it would just randomly pick, it just randomly goes through all of the different possible questions and allows you to do any of them, but that might not be the case. You're right, it might end up not working that way. Well, so here is a trick that you can use. Yeah, if sections are stuck in part 3, I don't remember. So it's been a while since I've looked at that part of the code. A colleague actually wrote it. So I will teach you a trick though. Depending on what you're trying to look for, this may or may not work. If you look right now, so if you look at the URL that you get to, it has CSE 115-S20. That's -S20 is for spring 20. If you choose another semester, you can go back and choose another semester. You may have to come up with things. You can see how things have changed a little bit over time, but the questions are basically identical. Actually, the questions are identical because whenever I update them in the latest semester, I update them in previous semesters. I have no idea what Project Videos is. I didn't teach the class this semester, but you would be able to go through possibly and find things out that way. Otherwise, you may not be, yeah. If you can't do that, then you may have to, I apologize. That's something I'll think about trying to change, but I promise you, I can tell you that change is not going to get done over the weekend. That's going to be actually a rather large change to be able to do. So that is one way of going about it. Part of the idea is that this part 3 questions sort of cover most of the other material. But that is an excellent question, excellent thought, something certainly I can look into to update over the summer. So any other questions? Any other thoughts before I say goodbye, at least for a little bit? Give you a little bit of time. I have no idea how long this... No, you can choose any term. Sorry. So the question was, sorry, if we change the term, then we need to start at the first one. I think you can go, yeah, you're going to need to start at the first question. That's correct. Because they all build off of one another. You're right. I don't know of, I forgot about that fact because because I can answer, I can go into any section because I'm faculty. Yeah, I don't know that there's going to be an easy way. You might have to, when I think about it, I don't remember. Yeah, you would need to go back to the first question. I'm not sure which, most of the skills internally inside the code, each area of inside a module is called a skill. I've used that term a couple times in class. Each skill, other than the ones at the very, very beginning, module 1, the JavaScript, whatever you want to call it, it's had a couple different names. Other than that, most of the questions, what happens is the rate that you find questions, the likelihood that questions come up does change as you get more stars. But once you have that third star, once you've completed that third star, I guess also the pre-labs, you can get all of the questions. It's just that it's biased towards the ones that you see more at the end of the, for that third star. But you should have a chance at least to bring up all of them. Again, the pre-labs are a little different. Honestly, if you're studying for this exam, I wouldn't worry about the pre-labs as much. I think the pre-labs are great questions. They're really important in terms of really tying everything together. And certainly for the lab exams, those pre-labs are great. The big difference between lab exams and the final exam, and this is true every semester, right? Lab exams, you're on Replit. You're trying to get stuff done. So that's the way it works. For this final exam, that's not the case. 6 minutes for each question. I guess so. 2 hours, 20 questions. Yes, 6 minutes. I hate math. Why are you asking me a math question? 6 minutes per question is correct. For some of the questions, though, a lot of them are going to be sort of definitions or, matching. They hopefully shouldn't take that long. Write the function header and opening delimiter. You can be certain you're going to be matching some function headers. Keep track of the language. You'll note that every time the language is bolded and highlighted to make clear which language you're working with. So hopefully that shouldn't take more than a couple of seconds. To be perfectly honest, I think anytime there are steps to consider, so yeah, I mean, any of these questions where like there's a Fahrenheit and Kelvin, you can actually honestly blow off the paragraph other than what the language is, because all you're ever going to be doing for any of these things which have steps or fill in the blanks, you just have to write what it says for that one step. And honestly, there's not that much more to it. So, yeah, I mean, so just to give you guys an idea, now, let's be clear. I have a 160. Yes, you need over a 160. That's a 50%. Can you not have recitations to revise for? I don't have the recitation questions in any format that's easy for students to see, unfortunately. I think you mean review, or I'm not sure. But honestly, the recitation questions aren't going to be the best review for this. Is there partial credit for every type of question? Yes and no. So when you have, so here's the JSON coding question, right? So you have to declare a variable named len and assign it to the number of entries in array, right? So it's either let or var, len be assigned r.length. In that sense, there is no partial credit for this one piece of it. Either it's right or it's not. That's the downside of electronic grading, unfortunately. On the flip side, each piece of this is done independently. So if you get this one completely wrong and this one completely right, you would end up getting 1/3 of the points. So, where you have, again, here there's 3 for 10 points. This first part is going to be this would be worth 3 points. This is actually worth 3 points. This is worth 3 points. Each part is done independently. Same thing for, all of these. Same thing for matching. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different things to match. This question was worth 20 points. So 20 divided by 5 is... Each one of them is worth 4 points, and they're each independent. So in that sense, there is partial credit. As far as the recitations go, as far as like I said, the lab, the pre-labs go, those are mostly about how to write the code in a setting like Replit or something like that, where you have to write it. If you think about how these questions work, I'm never asking you to write more than one line of code, and you're not going to ever be asked to write more than one line of code. When I ask you to write a line of code, if you notice in the sample questions and in the final exam, I'm going to be pretty damn specific about what you have to do. And the reason is that it's hard, right? And I totally accept it. I totally accept that with auto grading, there's, it's going to be finicky. So I'm going to be very explicit. If you look here, so for part 2, declare a variable named text and assign it to the value associated with the key ANS in object. So for that question, that part of the question, there's actually 3 different possible answers, right? Either var or let text be assigned. And then if you use brackets, it will accept it. If you use brackets with double quotes, it'll accept it. If you use brackets with single quotes, it'll accept it. If you want to use the dot operator, it'll accept it. So any of those are acceptable. Like I said, I really am trying to make sure I get every possible correct answer that I can. And I'm going to be pretty explicit. So a lot of those bigger issues, you know, how to, like the pre-labs, it's not as important. Understanding all these sort of, you know, the little details, how we use objects, how we call, you know, what document.get element by ID is, how we use JSON, that's a little bit more important. Other questions? I'm not sure what you mean by the questions of module 3. So the short answer is, let me do this real quick. Sorry, I realize you're not seeing something, but I'm going to show you something. Unfortunately, to do that, I have to pull up a bunch of stuff that I can't show you. So there we go. So from UB Infinite, the answer is not really. So I think I talked about in class this site called GitHub. This is actually the GitHub repo. Actually, this isn't, but we need to go to a different branch. So this is the GitHub repo that we use for where all of the code for Question Factory is found. If you want to see what a question looks like, so this is, I think, module 3, writing files. There's the histogram question. This is what I have. This is what I was given. It's not in a format that's particularly easy to understand, to post, to make available to all of you. You know, if you you can certainly go through those questions and go back to module 3, answer those questions. You can continue to answer questions. You should be given, as you get a right answer, just as before, other than perhaps the pre-lab, you should be given a new question. So you should be able to cycle through them that way. I don't know that there's an easy, specific question, you know. Actually, I don't have a way to pull up a specific question in UB Infinite. That's just not something we, unfortunately, got in there into the system yet. But again, I don't know if there's a topic you're concerned about, a question you're concerned about. Certainly asking about it is valuable, and you know, ask now, ask in Piazza. Again, please, 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 for my sanity and yours, actually more your sanity than mine, don't try to memorize any code from UB Infinite. I'll be perfectly honest with you. You're not going to see any of the UB Infinite questions on the final exam. And the reason why is when you're working on UB Infinite, you're on a computer with Replit and, you know, all sorts of other things. The goal is different. The goal of this final exam is to make sure you understand the concepts of what's going on. So, you know, in the final exam questions, it's, you know, update Elm's contents so that they duplicate the value of text, right? So that's making sure you understand that in this case, Elm is an input thing. So in order to do that, you'd have to say elm.value, or Elm in brackets and then string value is assigned, and then the value of text, which would be text, or text.toString if you want to do that. Either way works, right? It's not that sort of bigger type of question you were getting in UB Infinite. The brackets in the answer can mean a bunch of different things, unfortunately. When you have a bracket and a space and a bracket and a star, that means 0 or more spaces. If you see a bracket and a space and another bracket and the plus sign, that means 1 or more spaces. If you see a slash bracket, it means that you actually have to have the bracket character. Like I said, if you have questions, please just ask on Piazza. Hopefully, I tried to add in places where I saw some stuff. I tried to add some sort of there. You should be getting feedback on incorrect answers, only on incorrect answers, telling you, giving you hints about what the correct answer was. In order to make sure I can get as wide a range of answers as possible, I have to use all of these regular expressions, pattern matching, which I realize makes it completely unreadable. It gets even worse in the actual final exam questions I've started to write, because I am trying to make sure I capture every possible correct answer. So I'm using every possible trick under the book of regular expressions to get them in there. Don't worry about learning the regular expressions. Just ask. It's going to be a lot easier. We can answer it really quickly. Other questions, other thoughts, any issues? Yep. Like I said, if you have more questions, if you have other concerns, I will have office hours at 4 o'clock on WebEx. You can find the link and everything. Okay, I realize you're trying to be polite by saying enjoy the snow, but right now that seems like taunting to me. You're being mean. Will you get your final exam grade immediately after taking the final exam, since it's graded automatically? No, but for bizarre reasons, you'll get it. So the only reason it'll be a little bit delayed is that there are some students who are taking a makeup final exam. The makeup final exam is on Tuesday, so the following day. So I don't know how it shows in the system. I have it set up so that it won't appear in the grade book until Tuesday at like 2 o'clock. And that's just for, honestly, that's just an AI academic integrity issue, just to make sure everybody is taking the test on a level playing ground. I'm really sorry about having to, trust me, I'm really sorry about having to do that. But it will be available as soon as on Tuesday, as quickly as possible. I'm going to have, actually what I'm going to do as soon as I'm done with this live Q&A, I've got about 45 minutes to do a combination of eat lunch, use the bathroom, and also I'm going to try to get all of the Top Hat grades into UB Learns. So that way in UB Learns, the only thing that people might be missing will be, I guess, the lab exam 4 makeup, which can't appear until after lab exam 4 is done tonight. The project grading, the manual grading of the project is getting done, though there's still, that's going to take us a while still. So some people can see their scores, and then the final exam. Everything else should be in, certainly by the end of today, by the end of this evening. The only thing that will be missing in UB Learns will be, for some students, that the score on their project's manual grading. I'll get the final exam grade out immediately. If you're really concerned, I don't think there are any deadlines of Monday. If there are, just if you have some reason why you need to know earlier rather than later, if you email, well, Monday nights, by the time the test's over, I'm going to be dead. You can email me. I'll try to get to it first thing on Tuesday. So, other questions, concerns? Okay, well, thank you all so much. Thank you all for the great semester this semester. Thank you for all of your efforts, all of the advice, suggestions, honestly, some of the complaints you've given me. They've helped me out learning how to navigate this new online teaching environment. I honestly hope to never use it after this summer, but it was good to know. I hope to get to see all of you around the department in the fall, next spring, later on, and that you all stay safe, stay healthy, have a great weekend, enjoy the, do well on all your finals. Like I said, I want to see everybody do as well as possible. And thank you all. I will talk to you all later. Bye.